sense, Saab, of course, were friendly, and he promised her that he would paint on one of her walls. She said, I don't want a painting. I want you to come and paint on one of my walls in my home. And unfortunately, he got very sick and passed soon after. And as a parting gift, he left my mum a really beautiful long paintbrush signed by him. And he said, this is my way of giving you, a piece of my work, which I couldn't really complete. And my mum framed that paintbrush within that Kerala door frame.
Incredible.
And I would sit, I would get up and drink my tea and coffee and juice or whatever it was in front of this frame every single day for 15 years.
Wow.
And, that in my head, if you ask me what was inspiration, I said that was it, where you didn't really have to see art in its actual form. You could see a different version of it. And get very inspired. And that's when I looked at his work. I went up and dug up all his books, and I asked my mum about his work. And subsequently in 2015, I did a collection inspired by his work.
Oh, wow.
And it was really nice. We used charcoal, pencil and chalk, and just with our hand we sat and created these artworks and put it on these clothes. So I think for me, that was when I said, I really need to look up, and I think you'll agree with me on this, that art is also a form of education. What you don't find in a textbook, you'll find in art. So I think that's important for us. And like you said, it's important that we as a country preserve it, find more people who believe in it, and maybe we'll leave the generation after us a little bit richer,
I'm totally with you on that. I mean, it's like a meditation for me, watching nature. Watching the sky, or just gazing at the moon sometime. My nature walks in the morning, so sometimes it's just a leaf, that color on that leaf, or the color on that
or just flower. A butterfly going at a I've seen those.
A lot of my artwork is concerned with the city. A lot, I would say, most of it has to do with some form of urbanism, issues around urbanism, So this idea of the binary, I'm asked this question, is it this or that? Do you love one more than the other? It's not something that I can ever answer, because to be very honest, I think my art practice would collapse without my architectural practice. And I think my architectural practice would probably be much poorer for it if the art was not there for me to think about ideas that go beyond just the buildings that I design. So I don't really, there are times when art takes up a little bit more time, and there are times when architecture takes up more time. But I've learned over the last decade to be able to balance these, and maybe I'm not as prolific in both the fields as someone who's only a sole practitioner. But as things stand right now, I kind of see that they both go hand in hand while being very distinct.
13 crores with Minar, against you all. The bid is with Minar.
Public art doesn't really figure or exist within those cities. There are bits and bobs here and there, like little like trinkets that you put around, but it's not integrated within the city. And public art by itself is a very non-violent medium, and a medium which kind of brings a community together, because it almost kind of resonates with you in some way. It brings out some emotion.
They are both playing off dichotomies. They both play off these amazing paradoxes. So Virgil created a line of streetwear, right? Which is, what is the perception of streetwear? Cheap, inexpensive. And I remember reading this and being fascinated by him saying that I want to add an intellectual depth to streetwear. And I want to look at Duchamp, and I want to say that I'm happy to cut and paste, but I want to take it to a thought out level, which then makes it nothing cheap. And look at that idea. I think that idea was remarkable. So whether it's a Virgil or a Damien, that first idea, the initial kickoff, that little burst of creativity is magical. And that, I think, is where they take it and they transcend it. So then Virgil takes the same idea and goes to IKEA and creates a line of furniture for millennials. Okay, so look at his target audience. He's got LV, the men's collection, and he's got the millennial audience for furniture. He's got streetwear for Off-White. But he's transcending them all with a uniform philosophy. He will stop editing at 3%, as he says. He will not edit beyond 3%. There's great clarity of vision. There is politics, that he showed with Murakami. He tied up with Jenny Holzer. Again, he brings his own self. So the intimacy of art that I was talking about, all of these great artists, whether it's Atul, who brings his politics into his work, a Virgil who's bringing exactly what he believes in his philosophy, or a Damien Hirst, or a Banksy. What are they all bringing to the play? They're bringing an idea beautifully executed, which is unique, which is highly, highly intimate, which is personal, yet can resonate with millions across, regardless of geography, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of anything. And that is, I think, the beauty of these amazing people.
Is an insecurity for most people. From successful businessmen to a young professional, many people will say, oh, but I don't understand art and I don't understand design. But actually, when you think about it, every choice that we make is a translation of our intrinsic appreciation for certain kinds of design or a certain kind of art, which is why I think when you look at what was the last design choice I made in my day, it's the clothes that we wear, right? So one of the first step to making aesthetic choices is to understand what my taste is and what my style is, and that excavation process, to me, I think it begins in the wardrobe.
Only when you look at new things which are alien to you is when they start rewiring them, themselves back. So I think art has that sort of effect where it invokes something new in you, and I think it should, because the whole point of it is to have a new dimensional introduction every day in some medium or the other.
Always is a commentary of what is the artist seeing around and observing, and sort of putting it in, whether it is a canvas or a 3D medium, some sort of a visual, a narrative that is around that person. So art can be a social commentary, emotional commentary, or a political commentary, but it definitely needs to stimulate a person, the audiences, in some way or the other.
While an artist manifests an idea on the canvas, the architect visualizes or actualizes a vision into a form and space, and marrying art to science, elevating the idea into what we call state of being, or a state of multidimensional existence and experience, and where architecture merges with art and consequently art merges with architecture and design, can have a very blurring line, at the same time can have a very distinct line. I mean, those structural joints and modular units, which contain aspects of structure as a whole, or hold things in place, at times may become far too far-sighted, which means you will lose the attention of functional detail of an architectural form, and the creative idea or the central core of an idea of an architecture will alienate itself from the functionality and the engineering behind the functionality.
The whole idea of science that goes into it, and there's this whole idea of beauty that goes into it. I also like to think of it as very musical, because music is about spaces. If you look at music and rhythm, it's between a note and another, there is a little space. And when these spaces change, you get a pattern or you get a phrase, and then you get a musical note. In the same way, architecture is about spaces. And so if you think of the way the spaces are arranged in a building, you could make a musical note, and therefore a symphony if the building was still bigger. And I think all its elements are the different nuances that a musical overture can have. And you hear something in the background, you hear something in the foreground. And symphony has hundreds of violinists and musicians, pianists, percussion, and yet you hear it as one sound, but it's made of so many sounds. And so architecture is, for me, a similar analogy where you talk of it as a symphony of so many different elements coming together, as is art. So it's kind of all layered, complex. It's not one or the other. It's all of it together.
We're seeing like blurred lines in art and architecture, right? I mean, you're seeing so many architects actually who are dabbling. I mean, I use the word dabble because sometimes it's a more serious engagement, and sometimes it's just almost like a flirtation in the contemporary art practice, where we're seeing, whether it is, I went to an exhibition, in fact, I think a year and a half ago, where a bunch of architects had come together to put up these installations at the gallery in Chhatarpur here. And, and then you have like Martin Kosla, who's, very much kind of involved in the contemporary art practice, being represented by Nature Mod. Your products are being shown by different galleries. I mean, I know that I bought mine from Nature Mod as well.
The difference between art and architecture is just one word, just function, right? Like the thing that divides both these beautiful forms of art is function. But I think if you can have objects, and that's why I don't call our products as products, we call them objects, is because even if you look at Anish Kapoor's work, he calls them dysfunctional functional objects. He works with the whole idea of an object below the surface of the ground and the object above the. So all those philosophies actually excite me. When I read all of that, that gives me a lot of actually what I can say is confidence. I want to define a couch as a couch. I would want to see it's a piece of art that you can actually even sit on, So that would be interesting, right? Because then you live your life as a performance. I mean, living in a home, you have objects that can be used to eat upon, can be used to sit on, can be used to sleep upon. Why should we define them? So definitions are what we have given it to make make lives easy. But I think somewhere down the line, some of us need to blur those boundaries to make things just aesthetically pleasing, but at the same time have a little bit of function in it.
William Morris is one of the most significant cultural figures of Victorian England. His art has been found in wallpapers and textiles, tapestries, all over the world. And to date, they still remain in production. This is one of the greatest examples where art transcends time and design.